Little Susy's 6 Birthdays, Part 2 by Elizabeth Prentiss. This is recorded to celebrate the 6th anniversary of LibriVox. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 11. The 5th Birthday. There was something going on just before Susy's 5th birthday came that I shall have to tell you about, but you must not tell her. In the first place, Robbie's mamma has made a pair of white trousers and a green jacket with a crimped ruffle in the neck and sleeves, and he is going to wear them on the birthday and surprise Susy very much. In the next place, Papa is very busy indeed, making a great baby house, and Robbie can see it every day, but Susy knows nothing about it. Mamma is trotting round to all the shops, buying furniture for this house, and Nurse is dressing a lady who is to live there. Sarah, the cook, has made up her mind to bake a little pie for Susy. And Mary has been out and bought a great sugar dog. Robbie has a little book which he is to give Susy for his present, and his mamma reads to him stories from it when Susy is not by. Susy knew she was going to be 5 years old, and she talked about it a great deal, and said her birthday never, never would come. But at last it did come, and she awoke very early and hopped out of bed to see if Robbie were awake too. Oh, yes, he was awake, playing with his beloved Peggy, and telling her it was Susy's birthday. And Nurse was making the fire and hurrying to get dressed. So Susy gave him a good kiss and ran into her mamma's room to get her 5 kisses, and laughing at the thought of the happy day she was to have. Her mamma was very glad to see her, and she kissed her on her lips, her cheeks, and her forehead, and then they laughed so that Papa awoke, and he said, "Oh, is that my little Susy?" And she jumped into his bed and kissed him, and asked him if he loved her, and said she loved him dearly. But now it was getting late, and Nurse was knocking for Susy to come to be dressed, and Robbie was in such a hurry to give Susy her book that he couldn't wait any longer, so he took it from under his pillow and told her how he went away down to Broadway to buy it for her. Susy could read a little, and she opened the book and read The Lost Child. This was the title of the first story, and it is a very pretty story. While Susy was being dressed, Robbie told her his mamma had read it to him. After breakfast, Susy went and whispered something to her mamma, and they went together into that same little room, and prayed and thanked God, and after her mamma had gone away, Susy knelt down and prayed all by herself. When she came back to the nursery, there were her papa and mamma and Robbie, standing smiling by the new baby house. Susy was so astonished that she could not speak a word, but she threw her arms around her papa and mamma and Robbie, and danced about and clapped her hands, and they all rejoiced together. This baby house had 4 rooms in it, a kitchen, a dining room, a parlour, and a bedroom, and there was furniture in every one. In the parlour, in a nice chair, sat Miss Ellen, Susy's best doll, reading a book, and down in the kitchen there was Black Dinah frying buckwheat cakes. When Susy saw that, she had to get up and dance again. I believe those cakes were made of yellow flannel, but I don't know. I never tried to eat one. Chapter 12. The 5th Birthday Continued. Susy said she didn't care if it did rain. She should be very happy playing with her baby house with Robbie. She said this when she heard her mamma say that Frank and Charlie could not come to visit her if it should rain. It did not rain, but it snowed, and the wind blew, and by Susy's aunt sent her a little note, which you shall see. My dear Susy, I am sorry that Frankie and Charlie cannot spend the day with you today, as they have both bad colds. If it does not snow too hard, suppose you come and spend it with them. Give my love to your mamma, and tell her we want you very much. Frank sends you a little chair, with his love, and Charlie sends a book that he thinks you will like. Your affectionate aunt, Maria. Susy was delighted with this note, and delighted with the chair, and delighted with the book. She said she was afraid she should go crazy if she had any more presents. Her mamma thought there was going to be a real snowstorm, and that Susy had better not go to her aunt's. And Susy thought so too, for she did not like to go and leave her new baby house so soon. So her mamma wrote a little note excusing her, and she and Robbie began to play. She told Robbie he must come to see her, and make believe he was a little gentleman who wanted to engage a cook. On hearing this, Robbie's nurse said, "Wait a minute," and she took him into another room and dressed him in his new clothes, so that when he came back he looked indeed like a little man. He came holding down his head and smiling, and putting both hands into his pockets. Susy was astonished enough. She forgot all about her play, and ran to call her papa, who came running in, fearing something was the matter. But when he saw Robbie in his white trousers, he began to laugh, and he said he never saw anything so funny, and that he hoped his little boy had done now with girls' clothes forever. Susy thought she would run down into the kitchen and tell Sarah to come and see Robbie. So away she went, and when she reached the kitchen, she saw a little pie on the hearth, which made her forget all about Robbie. She caught it up with both hands, but let it drop quickly, for it was very hot, as it had just been drawn from the oven. Susy was so ashamed of herself for getting burned so carelessly that she would not cry, and Sarah brought a bowl of cold water, and told her to put both hands in. Susy did, and her fingers soon began to feel better, and she thought she would go and tell her mamma that she had burned them, but that they were now quite well. So she went first to the parlour, but no mamma was there, then to her mamma's room, but she was not there. She knew now she must be in the nursery, and just as she reached the door, oh, how her fingers began to smart again. She ran in, crying, and holding up her hands, and when Robbie saw her, he began to cry too. Chapter 13. The Fifth Birthday Continued. When her mamma saw that Susy's fingers were burned, she went to her great bag in which she kept all sorts of things, to be used in sickness, and took from it an old soft handkerchief, and asked nurse to bring something from the closet which she would find in the right-hand corner. While nurse was looking for it, Susy held up her fingers, and her mamma saw that all were burned but one. 9 little white blisters were pretty hard to bear, and Susy could not help crying while they were being dressed. So her mamma was very sorry for her little darling, and she took her in her lap and began to talk to the fingers to make Susy laugh and forget her pain. "Come, Mr. Thumb," said she, "and have a white cap on. And Miss Little Finger, don't get in my way while I dress your sister. Why, Mrs. Forefinger, how you do behave!" This nonsense amused Susy, and while she listened to it, she felt a little relieved, and began to smile in the midst of her tears. When the fingers were all nicely dressed, her mamma began to sing, and that made Susy forget all about her burns and laugh outright. This is what was sung. Susy Miller, she burnt her little finger. Susy Miller, she burnt her little finger. Susy Miller, she burnt her little finger. 1 little finger burnt. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little fingers. 4 little, 5 little, 6 little fingers. 7 little, 8 little, 9 little fingers. 9 little fingers burnt. This amused Susy a long time. Her mamma kept singing it over and over and over, and when she got tired of doing that, she sung other songs about Susy's dolls, and about Robbie, till he drew near, riding on a stick, to listen and admire too, with his little face all covered with smiles of delight. While they were all busy in this way, the door opened, and Susy's dear Aunt Lizzie came in. As soon as she saw the little row of burned fingers, she said she must repeat something funny to them, that would make them feel well. She did not know that Susy's mamma had been trying the same plan. So she laid aside her cloak and furs, and made Susy come and sit in her lap. Then she began. "Dance away, Thumbkin, dancy, Dance away, merry men all, but Thumbkin he can dance alone. Dance away, four-man dancy, dance away, merry men all, but Thumbkin he can dance alone. Dance away, middleman dancy, dance away, merry men all, but Thumbkin he can dance alone. Dance away, ringmen dancy, dance away, merry men all, but Thumbkin he can dance alone. Dance away, little man dancy, dance away, merry men all, but Thumbkin he can dance alone. This made Susy and Robbie laugh well, I can tell you, and Aunt Lizzie and their mamma laughed too, and Robbie said he knew something funny that his great-grandmother used to say to his mamma's toes when she was a little baby. "What is it?" said Aunt Lizzie. After a little coaxing, Robbie took Aunt Lizzie's hand, and beginning with her little finger, and so going on to her thumb, he said, "Peedy, peedy, pally, loody, lady whistle, lody wostle, great odo mondod." Oh, how Aunt Lizzie laughed! And she said she should go right home and tell it to her baby's toes, and see what they would say. So she kissed them all, and put on her cloak and furs, and went home, smiling all the way. By this time Susy's fingers felt so well that she thought she would go and play with Robbie. She said they would make visits to each other. So she went to live in one corner of the room, and Robbie in the other, and she said he might begin the play. So Robbie came to visit her. "How do you do, Mr. Miller?" said Susy. "Won't you take a seat?" "I tent very well," said Mr. Miller, who could not pronounce the letter C. "How is your wife, sir?" asked Susy. "Oh, she's pretty well. She's dot a pain in her hand, I believe." "Well, sir, you may go now. You've behaved very well, and I'll call to see you." So she walked over to Robbie's corner and knocked. "Tom in," said Robbie. "How do you do, Mrs. Miller?" "Very well, I thank you, sir. But one of my children is sick with lame legs. She fell from the table and broke off her legs." On hearing this, Robbie began to laugh. "You mustn't laugh, sir, when you hear that people's legs are broken off. Good-bye, sir. I hope you will call soon." Just then the bell rang for dinner. "Oh, Robbie, don't you want to sit at the table with us?" said Susy. She ran and asked leave, and his mamma said he might come, so they all went joyfully down together. Chapter 14. The 5th Birthday, continued. After dinner, Susy went back to the nursery with Robbie, and they played with the baby house together. She was very kind to Robbie, and let him take down all the chairs and tables, and he was so pleased that he kept stopping to kiss her and say, "My Susy, my Susy." Pretty soon their mamma came in and told them it had done snowing, and there would be time for a little bit of a walk before dark. So nurse bundled them up in all their warm clothes, and away they went. Little children have a great deal done for them. Every little child who reads this book has to be dressed 365 times every year, and undressed 365 times. And every year they must have the same number of breakfasts, dinners, and suppers. And I hope they thank God for his kindness to them, at least as often as he provides some dear mother or nurse to do this dressing, undressing, and feeding for them. Do you, Ellie? Do you, Willie? Susy and Robbie had a nice walk. Their mother took them to a bookstore, where she bought a book for a sick child whom they were going to see, and while it was being tied up neatly, she took up another book and read a short story in it. It was a German story, and she repeated it to Susy and Robbie as they walked home. 2 boys were once playing under a tree when a nut fell from it, near them. One of them picked it up. The other boy said, "It is my nut, for I saw it fall." "No, it is mine," said the other, "for I picked it up." Just then a larger boy came along, and he said, "What are you disputing about?" The little boys told him. "Give it to me," said he. "I will decide your quarrel for you." So he cracked the nut, and gave 1/2 the shell to one boy, saying, "This is for you, because you saw the nut fall." He then gave the other half shell to the second boy, saying, "This is yours, because you picked up the nut." Then, putting the kernel into his own mouth, he said, "And this is for my trouble in cracking it." "Oh, what a naughty boy!" said Susy. Robbie smiled, but did not say a word. I am sure he would not have done so. "Susy," said their mother, "the little girl for whom I bought this book was born on the very day you were, so this is her birthday too, and I thought I would send her a present, because she is sick and poor too." "How much did it cost, Mamma?" 3 shillings, I believe." "Mamma, haven't I 3 shillings of my own?" "Yes, dear." "And mayn't I pay for this book and send it to the little girl?" "I thought you were saving your money to buy a Bible." "Yes, Mamma, but I can wait till I learn to read better. And I should like to give my money to that little girl." Her mamma was very willing. She only wanted Susy to think a minute before she decided to give up the Bible. Robbie said, "I'll give that little girl my orange." His mamma smiled, and as soon as they got home, she sent the book and the orange to the little sick child, who had been lying still all day in bed with no birthday presents, and who was made very happy by means of Susy and Robbie. Chapter 15. The 5th Birthday, concluded. There were still a few minutes left before dark, and Susy said she was going to be a doctor and go and visit her patients. She told Robbie to lie down on the floor and make believe he was sick. So she put on a pair of spectacles and a cap, and took her papa's gold-headed cane from the closet and set out. When she came to Robbie, she said, "You are very sick with weakness, Mr. Miller. I shall have to bleed you." "Oh, no, I don't want to be bleeded," said Robbie. "Lie still, sir. I won't bleed you, if you will. I will give you 6 pills. Open your mouth and let me see your tongue. It's as red as fire. Let me feel your pulse. Why, it is going. I guess you won't die. People don't die when their pulse keeps going. You may soak his feet when he goes to bed, nurse." "Yes, sir," said the nurse, "I will." Susy then went to see her doll, Ellen. "Let me feel your pulse," said she. "Oh, it doesn't go at all. I'm afraid you'll die. But don't cry. I'll give you some oil, and that will set it a-going. And I guess I'll put a blister on your arm." Then she went to Peggy. "How do you do, Peggy? Not very well, did you say? Well, here is a dose of salts for you. Don't make faces. Drink it right down. I'll call again tomorrow. Oh, you needn't cry and beg me to come back. I am going to see my mother and ask her to tell me a story. Come, Rob." "Oh, you're a great doctor, aren't you?" said the nurse, laughing. Then Susy led Robbie down into the parlour where their mamma sat waiting for them. She kissed them and asked them if they had had a happy day, and they both said they had. So then she told them a story. Once a little angel saw the door of heaven open a little way, so he thought he would fly out just for an hour or so. He flew and flew a long time, and at last he came to a house. The window was open, so he flew in. "Oh, see that beautiful white bird," said one of the children. "No, I am not a bird. I am a little angel," said he. And he looked lovingly at all the children, who left their toys and came and stood around him. They felt afraid, yet pleased too. "See his wings? They are as white as snow," whispered one. "And look at his golden ringlets," said another. "And his white hands," said a third. The little angel sat down in one of their small chairs and began to look about him out of those large, friendly eyes. Then the children brought their books and toys, and let the dear angel look at them. Then they brought their baby sister, and the little angel smiled a most beautiful smile, and kissed the lovely rosy baby. By and by the children began to play. They were gentle, good children. If they had been naughty, the angel would have been frightened. He would not have stayed with them so long. "Let us be kind and pleasant," said the children. "Angels like to be with people who love each other." "When he goes home, I wish he would let me go with him," said one. "I want to be a little angel." And then they played again. The angel stayed all day. It made them happy to turn around every now and then and see him there, looking so peaceful, so kind, so loving. But when it grew dark, the angel stretched his beautiful white wings and flew home to heaven. Then the children all cried, and held out their hands and said, "We would have given him all our things if he would have stayed." And the youngest said, "I was going with him. I want to be a little angel." Then his mother kissed him and said, "All the beautiful things in this world could not keep an angel away from heaven." Then the children said, "Heaven must be a happy place if it is full of such angels as that." And their mother said, "Yes, indeed it must, and you shall all go there if you are good and love Jesus." "Is that a true story, Mamma?" asked Susy. "No, not quite true, but it is true that you will see bright angels when you go home to heaven." "I wish I could go now," said little Susy. Then she kissed her dear mamma, and she and Robbie went to bed and dreamed very sweet dreams indeed. And their mother kissed them in their sleep, and prayed in her heart that they might be holy, happy children on earth, and angels in heaven when they came to die. Chapter 16. The 6th Birthday. Susy awoke very early on the morning of her 6th birthday. It was dark and cold and still. She wanted very much to jump up and run to her mamma for her 6 birthday kisses, but she knew it would not do to get up before the fire was made. Nurse was just opening the shutters, and Robbie began to rub his eyes and look up to see what was going on. "Robbie, it's my birthday," said Susy. "Yes, I know it," said Robbie. "I mean to get into your bed," said Susy. "Well," said Robbie. So Susy got into Robbie's bed, and they began to frolic together. Susy threw the pillows at Robbie, and Robbie threw them at her, till Nurse said they must not do so, and then they stopped, and tried to think what they could do next. "I'll read to you out of a Rollo book," said Susy. "Oh, well," said Robbie. But just then Robbie's nurse was ready to give him his bath. "Well, I can read to myself then," said Susy. So she went on reading as fast as her tongue could fly. She could read very well now. By and by it came her turn to be bathed and dressed, and while Nurse curled her hair, she sat in a high chair and read aloud to Robbie, who thought her just about the dearest little sister in the world. After breakfast and prayers, Susy went away into her mamma's little room, and knelt down and asked God to forgive her for every naughty thing she had ever done in her life, and to help her to be very good all that day. When she came back to the nursery, she went to the window, and stood there looking out. Her mamma thought something seemed to trouble her, and she came gently behind her and said, "What is my little Susy thinking about?" "I don't know, Mamma." But after a moment she said, "Will God mind it if I do not know how to pray so well as big people?" Her mamma said, "Once a little girl did or said something naughty, and her papa punished her for it by saying he should not kiss her for 2 hours. She sat down, feeling very sad and sorrowful, and wishing her papa would forgive her. And at last she thought she would write him a little note, tell him how sorry she was, and ask him to forgive her. She did not know how to write very well, and her little note was full of blots and mistakes. But she ventured to carry it up to his study and put it into his hands. Now, when her papa opened the little note and saw all those blots and mistakes, do you suppose he said, "Oh, I can't forgive a child who writes so badly as that"? No, he said, "Papa forgives his little darling gladly. He loves to forgive her." And he took her in his arms and kissed her again and again. Now, when little children pray to God, I suppose their prayers do have some mistakes and blots on them. They are poor little prayers, but they are all heard by gentle Jesus, meek and mild, the same Jesus who once took children in his arms and blessed them. And he loves every little sorry heart, and will give it all it asks for. Susy was comforted, and her mamma kissed her many times, and then told her to go out with Robbie to roll hoop. Chapter 17. The 6th Birthday, continued. Susy had a fine time driving her hoop. Hers was made of wood, but Robbie's was iron. While they were running up and down the sidewalk together, their papa came out and watched them a few moments, and when they came up to him, he said, "Well, my darlings, have you had a nice play?" "Oh, yes, papa," they said. "Well, how should you like to go and spend the day with Grandmamma?" "Oh, I should like it dearly," said Susy, clapping her hands. "Shall I go too?" asked Robbie. "Yes, you too," said his papa. "Is Mamma willing? Is she going too?" asked Susy. "No, Mamma can't go very well, but she wants you and Robbie to go." "I don't want to be away from Mamma on my birthday," said Susy. She ran into the house and found a woman she never had seen sitting there. "Who is that woman?" she whispered. "She is going to spend a few weeks with us," replied her mamma. Susy did not like that at all, but she only said, "And can't you go with us to Grandmamma's?" "No, darling, not today. I am very sorry to disappoint you, dear Susy, on your birthday, but it cannot be helped. I think Grandma will send for Frank and Charlie." "I'm afraid they'll have to go to school." "Oh, this is Saturday," said her mamma. Then Susy began to think it would be very pleasant to go, even if she had to leave her dear mamma behind. So she went to the nursery, where she found Robbie all nicely dressed, and her own things all ready and waiting for her. "We're going in the cars," said Robbie. "I mean to carry my doll," said Susy. "And I shall take my blocks," said Robbie. His nurse laughed at him, and said he would need one man to carry his blocks then, for there was a cartload of them. "Then he'll need a horse," said Susy. "Are you going with us, Nursey dear?" said Robbie. "Oh, yes, indeed. Your papa and mamma have no idea of sending you two little monkeys off by yourselves." By this time Susy was all dressed, and she and Robbie ran in to kiss their mamma. She kissed them many times, and then their papa said he would see them all safely in the cars. They were very happy indeed, and the cars did not go faster than their little tongues did. They reached their Grandmamma's house at 11 o'clock. She was sitting by the fire, knitting, and when she saw them coming in, she was delighted. "It's my birthday, Grandma," said Susy. "I'm 6 years old." "And I'm 4, said Robbie. "I'm almost 6. Grandmamma helped take off their coats and tippets and mittens, and she said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send right over for Frank and Charlie, and you shall all have a fine play together." "Oh, yes, Grandma, do," cried Susy. "For since Aunt Maria moved away from New York, we don't see Frank or Charlie at all, and Frank loves me." Chapter 18. The 6th Birthday, continued. In a few minutes Frank came running in, with his cheeks as red as roses, and he kissed Susy and Robbie and seemed delighted to see them. "But where's Charlie?" said Grandmamma. "Oh, he's coming pretty soon, Grandma. He had to stop to have another sack on, and a clean ruffle. That's all." "Well now, I suppose you are all hungry, and Grandma doesn't know what to give you for luncheon, unless it's a piece of apple pie." Apple pie for luncheon? Why, Grandma!" said Susy. But Grandmamma had already gone, and in a few minutes in came hot apple pies and a great plate of cheese. Robbie's nurse said, if Grandma pleased, she should rather he had a cracker for his lunch. "Oh, I do want some pie," said Robbie. "Well, when they come to see Grandma, they must have something better than cracker," said Grandmamma, and she began to cut the pie, while the children stood waiting about, thinking it was a very fine thing to come to see her. "I must help Susy first," said she, "because it is her birthday." "And Robbie next, because he's such a stranger," said Frank. When they were all helped, the cheese was offered them. "No, I thank you, Grandma," said Susy. "Mamma does not allow me to eat cheese." "She doesn't allow me to eat cheese either," said Robbie. He shouted this out in such a loud voice that all the children laughed. Robbie blushed and cast down his eyes and wanted to cry, but he was afraid Grandma would not let him come there again if he cried, so he began to crowd great pieces of pie into his mouth, and pretty soon he forgot his troubles. "Why didn't your mother come?" asked Frank. "She couldn't very well," said Susy. "You've learned to read, Susy, have not you?" asked Grandmamma. "Oh, yes, Grandma, and Mamma was going to give me a book for my birthday present, but she forgot all about it, we came away in such a hurry." "Well, I want you to come and read me one chapter in this Bible, and then I will give it to you for your own." Susy flew into her dear, kind Grandmamma's arms, and hugged and kissed her. She said, "I had rather have a Bible than anything else in the world. What chapter shall I read? May I read anywhere I choose?" Grandma said she might, so Susy sat down and began to turn over the leaves. She wanted to find "The Lord is my Shepherd." One day she had found it in the big Bible at home, and liked it dearly, she said. "I guess it isn't in this Bible, Grandma," said she. "Let me see. What is it you want to find, dear?" "The Lord is my shepherd," said Susy. "Oh, that is the 23rd Psalm," said Grandma. "I'll find it." So Grandma quickly turned to the place, and Susy read the psalm very well indeed, and Grandma kissed her, and said she hoped the Lord would indeed be her shepherd, and then she gave her the Bible, and Susy was very happy, and in her heart she hoped so too. Chapter 19. The 6th Birthday, continued. All this time the other children were playing about the room, and Susy went to play with them. Charlie had come, and was looking as rosy and happy as Frank. Grandma said, "I suppose Charlie can't come and speak to his old Grandma," said she. Charlie went up to her and kissed her. "I forgot it," said he. "I've got a new sack on, my mother made it. She makes everything I wear but just my boots." "And your caps," said Grandma. "Oh, she makes my caps too," said Charlie in reply. "Doesn't she, Frank?" "Oh, what a woman," said Grandma. Then they all began to play again, as hard as they could play, at Puss in the Corner, and I don't know what not. And Grandma sat and knit, and looked on, and looked as happy as they. Every now and then Susy would leave her play and run to take a peep at her new Bible. Meanwhile time was slipping away, and the children were all astonished to hear the dinner bell ring. "Why, Grandma," said Susy, "is it 3 o'clock?" "No, it is only 2, said Grandma. "I had dinner early, so as to give you time to get home before dark." So they all went to dinner, and Susy sat next Frank, and Robbie next to Grandma, and when they were still, and had folded their hands, Frank asked a blessing. He always did when his papa was not present. Now I shall not tell you whether I approve of this or not. I am only telling you what really happened. "Now, children, I don't know how you'll like Grandma's dinner," said she. "If I had known you were coming, I would have had chickens." "What sort of meat is that?" said Susy in a whisper to Frank. "Why, ham," said he. "What is it made of?" asked she. "Of pig," said he. "Grandma, I like pig," said Susy. They all laughed because Grandma laughed, and because they were so happy together. While they were talking, Grandma was helping them all around, and Robbie's nurse had come in to cut up his meat for him. They enjoyed their dinner very much. Grandma looked so happy and so kind, and the sun shone in so brightly, and they had had such a fine frolic. Pretty soon there came in a great dish of sweet baked apples and a pitcher of cream, and then the little folks had as many as they pleased. And, take it all together, I doubt if there was a happier dinner party in the world. "Shall we have time to play any more, Grandma?" asked Susy. "Oh, yes, you'll have a good large half-hour, darling, and I think I must let you all blow bubbles." Grandma kept a number of pipes all the time for the amusement of the children when they came to visit her. She now gave them each one, and a bowl of soap-suds, and they all began to blow bubbles. Oh, what bubbles! Robbie, as it happened, had never seen any bubbles before, and he danced up and down when he found he could blow one, all himself. Chapter 20. The 6th Birthday, continued. The half-hour soon slipped away, and then the children were warmly dressed, and their grandmamma kissed them over and over, and charged nurse to be very careful of them. "And come again soon," said she. Susy and Robbie talked about their visit all the way home. "I like Grandma," said Robbie. "She gave me a Bible," said Susy. "I am going to see her again pretty soon," said Robbie. "You'll have to ask Mamma first," said Susy. "When I'm a big man, I mean to give her a shawl," said Robbie. "Where will you get the money?" asked Susy. "Oh, I shall have some money. Big men always have money." "Where do they get it?" asked his nurse. "Oh, out of their pockets," said Robbie. His nurse laughed. "You know a great deal, little man, don't you?" said she. She drew him closer to her side and threw her cloak over his feet, and Robbie looked up into her kind face with one of those bright, pleased smiles with which he was in the habit of thanking her for loving him. "Are you cold, dear?" said she. "Oh, no, I'm as warm as toast," said he. "So am I," said Susy, "but I want to get home and show my Bible to Papa and Mamma." In a little while they reached New York. It was beginning to grow dark. "Dear me, I'm sure I'd no idea it would grow dark so fast," said the nurse. The lamps in Broadway were all lighted as they rode through it, and the children enjoyed seeing the brilliant shop windows. They were never out so late before in their lives. "I'm afraid Mamma will be in bed and asleep," said Susy, "and then I can't show her my new Bible." At this moment they drew near their own house. Their papa came running to the door, smiling and looking very happy. "Where is my darling Mamma?" asked Susy. "You shall see her in a moment. Let's get these things off first," said Papa. "Why, Papa, are you going to take off my things?" asked Susy, laughing. "But why doesn't Mamma come? I want to see Mamma." Her papa kept hurrying off her coat and hood, and getting strings into hard knots, and Susy could not think what was the matter with him. "Papa," said she, very gravely, "were you ever crazy?" "No, indeed," said her papa. "Do you think you ever shall be, Papa?" "I hope not," said he, laughing. "I'm only in a hurry now because I've something to show you." He caught Susy in his arms, he was so happy, and nurse took Robbie, and away they all went as fast as they could run. Chapter 21. The 6th Birthday, concluded. They went straight to Mamma's room, which was not very light, and at first the children could see nothing distinctly. but Susy soon perceived her mamma lying in bed. She sprang from her father's arms and flew to kiss her, calling her "Darling mamma, sweet mamma, precious mamma," till all at once it struck her that her mother returned her kisses and caresses less heartily than usual. "Don't you love me, mamma?" said she. "Yes, darling, dearly," said her mamma, "but you haven't looked at your birthday present yet." She opened the bed a little way, and Susy and Robbie, peeping in, saw a dear little baby lying on their mamma's arm, fast asleep. They were so astonished that at first they did not say a word, but in a few minutes they began to dance all about the bed, clapping their hands and asking all sorts of questions, and saying all sorts of joyful things, they didn't know what. "Oh, what a little dear!" said Susy. "I hope it is a boy. What is its name? When did it come? Was it while we were gone?" "Yes, it is a boy," said their papa, "and a very fine fellow too, and he came about 2 hours ago." "Oh, mamma, wasn't God good to send you such a dear little baby?" said Susy. "Are you sure it is a boy? What is his name?" "You shall give him a name, dear, because he was born on your birthday," said her mamma. "Then I'll have his name Henry," said Susy. "He shall be named for papa. Mamma, you don't love anybody better than papa, do you? Shouldn't you like to call him for papa?" Her mother smiled. "No, I don't think I love anybody better than papa," said she. "Is he my little brother?" asked Robbie. "Yes, indeed," said his nurse. "Then I'll give him all my playthings." He was hurrying off to get them, but his papa called him back. "Never mind tonight," said he. "Baby is tired and wants to go to sleep now." "Yes," said Susy. "He's come a long journey today." "Where from?" asked Robbie. "Why, all the way from heaven," said she. "Oh," said Robbie. But now that strange woman, whom Susy had seen in the morning, said she thought the children had better go to bed. So they kissed their dear mamma, and she said to Susy, "I don't feel very well tonight, dear, and could not you sing to Robbie before he goes to bed?" "Oh, I'll sing to him," said papa. "Oh, well, you'll find the song I had just got ready for them in my portfolio." They all went to the nursery together, and papa sung the song mamma intended to sing. They liked it very much. I will put it in at the end of this chapter, and you can get your mother to sing it to you. Their papa then kissed them, and nurse hastened to undress and put them to bed. "It's a nice thing to have such a dear little brother, isn't it?" said she. "You'll take a great deal of comfort with him." "I mean to tell God I thank him very much for sending me such a present on my birthday," said Susy. "Robbie shall too," said the nurse. So they knelt down to say their evening prayer, and Robbie was delighted to be able to pray for the first time for a brother, and Susy said when she rose from her knees, "Now I've got 2 brothers. Oh, how glad I am." "I've only got 1 brother," said Robbie, suddenly growing sorrowful. "Oh, but you've a darling little sister, and Susy has none," said his nurse. This comforted Robbie, but in a moment after he said, "Hasn't Susy got her own self for a sister?" "Well, hasn't Robbie his own self for a brother?" said nurse. So they all began to laugh, and Susy kissed Robbie, and Robbie kissed nurse, and they all were as happy as they could be, till they fell asleep. I must now give you the German hymn Susy's papa sang to her and to Robbie, and then I must bid my dear little readers good-bye. Knowest thou how many stars there are shining in the sky? Knowest thou how many clouds every day go floating by? God the Lord has counted all. He would miss one should it fall. Knowest thou how many flies play about in the warm sun? Or of fishes in the water? God has counted every one He called by name, When into the world it came. Knowest thou how many children Go to little beds at night, That without a care or trouble Wake up with the morning light? God in heaven each name can tell, Knows thee too, and loves thee well. End of Part II of Little Susy's 6 Birthdays. End of Little Susy's 6 Birthdays by Elizabeth Prentiss. Read by Darvinia.